The Honorable Barry Lynn has served as Executive Director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, a Washington, D.C. based organization dedicated to the preservation of our Constitution's religious liberty provisions since 1992. An ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and an attorney, Barry appears frequently on television and radio, offering analyses of First Amendment issues. He is the author of several books. The latest is God and Government, 25 Years of Fighting for Equality, Secularism, and Freedom of Conscience. Barry has won many national awards, including the Freedom of Worship Award from the Roosevelt Institute and Religious Liberty Award from the American Humanist Association. Barry was the organization that he leads, Americans United, was the lead plaintiff, I believe, or a lead organization in the litigation against Notre Dame University, which was using religion and using religion as an excuse to withhold birth control from faculty, staff, and students at Northwestern at Notre Dame. Northwestern didn't do that. At Notre Dame, and he has really taken the lead in ensuring that we do maintain a separation of church from state. And Barry, it's really a pleasure to welcome you here.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here, and it's also a great pleasure to be a member of NOW. However, you know, in all of the work that I've done in so many organizations for so many issues, I've come to realize that I am 3/4 of the way in support of Donald Trump's vision for America, and I have a hat to prove it. See, this says, "Make America Great," but I took a Band-Aid over the "again." Because this idea that mythologically we passed some golden age when everything was just great is mythological nonsense, as is its corollary, we're great right already. That's not true either. I revere the United States Constitution as a pretty good start, a jumping off point for judicial evolution through the amendment process, which one day will actually get us to the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, as originally adopted, the Constitution, of course, made it really impossible for almost everybody in this room, with the exception of myself and a few other people around, to even vote. But I am white, I am male, and I'm a tad over 21. I'm also particularly partial, of course, to all the provisions in the Constitution that guarantee genuine religious liberty, no religious tests for public office, guaranteeing of the separation of church and state. As voters, we really shouldn't care much about the president's religious beliefs unless they happen to become the substitutes for constitutional values. In a strange, now there is a little strange constitutional confluence here, because Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both have said months ago that their favorite book is the Bible. Now, the only good thing that that's actually meant is that reporters stopped asking other people running for office of the President of the United States, "What's your favorite book?" under the assumption that they would not really get somebody else to say something different, like, "I think Treasure Island, 50 Shades of Grey is mine." But now, you know, if you start talking about the Bible, you ought to know a little bit about it. Donald Trump was asked what his favorite verse in the Bible. Initially, he said, "I can't really say that, it's too personal." Then when he was asked, well, what's your favorite testament? And he said, "I love them both equally." He's a lover. He loves the women. He loves the Hispanics. He loves the Chinese. He loves to say Merry Christmas, and just on the internet this morning, I understand there's some evidence that he loves himself. Here's what we do need to know about presidential candidates. What are the kind of people they will put on the United States Supreme Court? Because they're going to lose another 3 members of that court in the next 5 years. Mr. Trump gave a list of the judges that he would nominate. One judge on the list, a person against whom we have litigated, said that Roe versus Wade manufactured, quote, a constitutional right to murder an unborn child. And just this week, Trump met with a whole group of evangelicals and said he would never appoint anyone who was not a so-called pro-life judge. Even with amendments to that original Constitution, we still needed legislation to put teeth into the provisions of it. Congress passed the 15th Amendment, got the voting for African American men, but we had to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to prohibit literacy tests and poll taxes, other roadblocks that were used almost invariably to disenfranchise racial minorities. Sadly, though, 3 years ago, the Supreme Court eviscerated the Voting Rights Act by interpreting the Constitution in an obsessively narrow manner, not regarding the principles of that grand document about human equality and democratic participation. It set us back 50 years, and now we need legislation to move forward again, but the Republican leadership in Congress has demonstrated zero interest in getting more people to vote. Another terrible decision has been alluded to a couple times, Hobby Lobby. That's where a for-profit company, best known for things like do-it-yourself pink flamingo kits, was given the right to exercise religion by refusing to cover the most effective forms of birth control for the tens of thousands of women employees around the country. Again, the Supreme Court abandoned that constitutional principle of equality and really helped to gut important provisions for women's health in the Affordable Care Act. Senator Patty Murray, of course, has introduced a bill to fix that too, but Senator Mitch McConnell has never allowed it to be voted upon on the merits out of a fear that there just might be some Republicans who believe Hobby Lobby was wrongly decided. And Hobby Lobby, of course, led to a lot of other litigation about religiously affiliated hospitals, universities, social service providers who object to providing the women on their staff or their students any kind of access to contraceptive care and insurance policies, even though they don't have to provide it and they don't have to pay for it under the regulations that guide it. The administration thought, we can accommodate some of these religious groups. We'll just have them sign a 560-word statement, drop it in the post box, and then they won't have to do it. They just have to assert that they have a conscientious objection to covering contraception, and they won't have to do it. Unfortunately, sadly, as predicted by some of us, a lot of religious groups in this country said, nope, not enough. We refuse. It violates our conscience to say in a document, we have a conscientious objection to doing something. Well, this has been in and out of court. We've been involved in a lot of them. 11 of the 12 federal appeals courts rejected this kind of analysis, basically saying if women choose to make contraceptives part of their comprehensive health care plan, they deserve to have it. And a few of those cases just went to the Supreme Court on May the 16th. I am glad that Americans United represented the only actual person in any of these cases, a woman student at Notre Dame, and that we also represented 240 women in these other cases before the Supreme Court, students at religiously affiliated institutions, as well as employees at such places. Well, a few weeks ago, we thought we might get an answer from the Supreme Court as to this idea of we won't cover insurance, and it shocks our conscience to even say we won't do that, but we didn't. We got a limbo. We got 4 members of the court who basically said, you know, what we ought to do is just put this back and find out if the parties can find another accommodation, if they can find some other compromise. We don't compromise women's health. I cannot imagine that kind of result. If this was about testicular cancer, do you think we would have reached this result? The answer is no. No compromise is ever going to happen because the groups that oppose the accommodations already made, they were outside on May 16th, along with so many of us outside the Supreme Court, making it clear what our position was. And as I looked across the pavement, there were some people from these groups. These are groups that didn't like it. Priests for Life, Little Sisters of the Poor, the Pittsburgh Archdiocese. You know, these are the guys who don't want contraception available for anyone under any circumstance. They want to remove another 50 years of law that began in 1965, when the United States Supreme Court ruled that contraceptive use for married couples could not be outlawed. They want to take us back to that. It's not about a few little nuances. It's about a fundamental belief. Contraception is sinful, evil, and you shouldn't do it. I've been fighting the religious right for most of my life, one place or another, for 25 years at Americans United. One of the things about them is they pick really strange people to become heroes of their movement. People like Kim Davis, the county clerk down in Kentucky, who refused to sign same-sex marriage licenses. You know, I was upset initially because people were dredging up comments about her sexual history, about her appearance. I don't think we need to do that. What we need to do is to say Kim Davis applied for, ran for, and was elected to perform an $80,000 a year job, and she refused to do it. And that does not mean that she is Rosa Parks or Dr. King or Dred Scott. On the other hand, the right, the politicians beholden to them, do engage in the politics of very personal destruction. They tried to destroy our friend Cecile Richards at Planned Parenthood with misleading charts, with edited videos, but they utterly failed to do it. And they spent 11 hours grilling Secretary Clinton about Benghazi, and mainly just looked like, to use a kind of technical theological term, jackasses. The Obama administration's been great on a lot of things, not so great, though, honestly, on some things. I wish they would start to enforce the law that says that churches cannot endorse or oppose candidates for public office, because that is a huge deflection. I also wish that the Obama administration would do away with some of the regulations from the past administration that permit the oddity of having it possible for religious entities, whether it's a local church or a big multinational charity, to discriminate not on the basis of sexual orientation when they make a contract, but still to discriminate on the basis of religion. So if you have a contract with an international group to do some kind of work for the poor out of the country, if you're a Unitarian lesbian, they cannot discriminate against you because you are a lesbian, but they can discriminate against you because you are a Unitarian. That is absolutely absurd. I was in Key West, Florida, the day after the shootings in Orlando, and to tell you, the Gay Pride Parade there that day was one of the most moving things I've ever participated in or seen. Every float had a big sign saying, "We stand with Orlando," and notwithstanding that night before, that's the kind of solidarity that shows the progress that we can make, but when we make it together. When we work together, people do get changes. That's why there are civil rights movements, progressive victories. Politicians rarely lead, with the exception of the people who are the friends of many of us of my age: Bella Abzug, Pat Schroeder, Bella Abzug, John Lewis. You know what the thing that draws them all together? They were activists first. Then they got into Congress. I love this job. I've been doing it for 25 years with Americans United. I've had the great opportunity to meet many of the great giants of the civil rights movements, people that are here today, including Terry and all of the former presidents of now. I think of people like Frank Kameny, Phyllis Lyons, Evan Wolfson from the GLBT movements. I think of Dolores Huerta, Cesar Chavez, Bill Baird, Betty Friedan. They should be our heroes, but we can never forget that there were behind those heroes tens of thousands of us who worked and will continue to work. We're not going to stop organizing. We're not going to stop marching or letter writing, litigating, or protesting, or voting until we win, because we are dedicated as a group of people to making America great, really, for the first time. Thanks so much.